The September 10th Harbor Commission meeting is now in session. May I have a roll call, please?
Let the record reflect that all commissioners are present with the exception of Commissioner Williams.
Thank you. And may I have Commissioner Young lead us in the pledge of allegiance?
Please join me in the salute to our flag. Place your hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Young. At this time, we'll ask for public comments, and public comments are invited on non-agenda items. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes before speaking. We invite but do not require you to state your name for the record. The Harbor Commission has the discretion to extend or shorten the speaker's time limit on non-agenda items, provided the time limit adjustment is applied equally to all speakers. As a courtesy, we ask that everyone please turn off your cell phones or set them in the silent mode. Any public comments this evening? Okay, seeing none. Next item is approval of the minutes from the August 13th Harbor Commission regular meeting. And I believe we have comments from Commissioner Secretary Scully and myself. Are there any additional comments from Commissioner Sorchek? Commissioner Williams, welcome. My apologies. No worries. None. Commissioner Miller? None. Anything else to add? So, any public comments with respect to the minutes from August 13th? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes with the 2 comments submitted by Secretary Scully and myself.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting with the additions of my additional comments and Chair Bear's additional comments, and that is exempt from secret.
I second.
Let's go to vote.
Motion passes with Vice Chair Marston abstaining as well as Commissioner Sparchek abstaining.
Thank you. So item 6.1 is a presentation from the Newport Mooring Association. And the Newport Mooring Association, or referred to as the NMA, will provide the Harbor Commission with a presentation on its role, activities, and priorities in support of the city's mooring permittees and the broader harbor community. The NMA is a nonprofit organization that represents the interests of mooring permit holders within Newport Harbor and serves as a liaison between permittees and the city. The presentation will include an overview of the association's history, current initiatives, and ongoing efforts to promote responsible harbor use, enhance communication with stakeholders, and support the city's management of the mooring program. The purpose of this presentation is to familiarize the Commission with the NMA's work, encourage dialogue on shared goals, and identify opportunities for collaboration. I know there is a staff report. Mr. Harbor Master, if you'd like to discuss any of the history or anything like that, or we can go right into the presentation. Very good. Let it roll.
Good evening. Thank you so much. My name is Ann Stenton. I'm president of the Newport Mooring Association. I want to thank Mr. Scully for reaching out and inviting the NMA to speak tonight. This is a step in rebuilding what was once a really strong working relationship between the city and the Newport Mooring Association. In your email, you indicated that the goal of the presentation would be to open a constructive dialogue between the Harbor Commission and the NMA, and to better understand the association's current direction, priorities, and areas of concern. To be honest, as I mentioned in my email, I don't have a lot of new information to add. Our community has been writing letters, showing up, speaking at Harbor Commission meetings like this for many years. So we are hopeful that we can move towards a true dialogue, which means not just listening, but also taking action on both sides. Our community has expressed many of the very same points I'll be making tonight. It seems as though a new approach is needed if the Harbor Commission is genuinely interested in building that constructive dialogue. So as mentioned in my email, we think that a dialogue mediated by a neutral third party would perhaps be a better use of everyone's time. However, that being said, in the interest of moving towards that more constructive dialogue, I'm happy to share a little bit of our concerns and a little bit of history with the Commission tonight. My goal, as always, is to advocate for fair policies that acknowledge mooring permittees as equal tidelands users with equitable rights to public access and protections. My clicker.
Yes.
There we go. Am I loud enough?
Yes, we can hear.
So how did we get here? Over the last decade, mooring holders have been hit with wave after wave of improvements.
Excuse me, Ann, one second. Are these other screens not working in front of us, or is there some way for you to activate them? We might wind up with a lot of neck pain. Well, we can use the paper copies too. Thank you. All right. Sorry for the interruption.
No, that's fine. What is it? We work with technology, but technology doesn't always work with us, right? Yeah.
Simple as pushing the on button.
So over the past decade, mooring holders have been hit with wave after wave of these improvements. As a coastal commissioner put it, the experts in the room, the mooring holders, have not always been consulted in a meaningful way when many of these improvements were conceived. When these proposals were shared with the public, our input wasn't always given much consideration. It often feels like these changes are being done to us and not with us, and we're looking for that to change. So focusing on the last 3 years in particular, here are a few examples. In 2022, we saw a huge rate increase proposed for shore moorings. Luckily, that did not go through. We also saw a proposal floated to set aside $1 million a year for 30 years for the city to buy back moorings. In 2023, mooring holders were assured by city officials that moorings would be transferable in perpetuity. And the mooring realignment plan was pushed forward despite valid safety and access concerns. In 2024, from January through June, our community devoted months to attending meetings, submitting letters, and participating in what we believed was a public process focused on rate increases. All that effort was swept aside in July with a last-minute recommendation to both raise rates and convert mooring permits to licenses, which this commission gave its blessing to. Our confidence in a fair process by decision makers, it was shattered. It doesn't seem that public participation has had an impact, and we're looking for that to change. So the California Constitution and the public trust doctrine require openness, fairness, and public participation, but we have some concerns. We've had some broken promises where the commission and the city employees have not always followed through on promises or declared intentions. We've seen disparate treatment, where discriminatory treatment of mooring permittees versus peer permittees, yacht clubs, and associations has resulted in inequitable treatment or outcomes for similar or equivalent uses of the tidelands. There we go. Unequal tidelands rates and contributions have resulted. We see mooring permittees contributing substantially more to the Tidelands Fund than residential peer permittees and others, despite similar numbers of permits. Mooring permittees face drastically increasing rates compared to peer permittees. And finally, we're really concerned by a lack of transparency and meaningful community inclusion. Public engagement appears to be a practice of political tokenism rather than actual partnership or stakeholder inclusion, and we're looking for that to change. Public engagement must be more than a box to check, it's gotta be real. Okay, I'm not sure if this video is going to work or not, but I would like to play it. I did submit it separately, so I don't know if it needs to be pulled up separately or if it will work.
To or references all existing mooring permits in existence prior to the passage of this ordinance, in case it does, will remain transferable. And the Harbor Department's process as it is today, and whether you pass this or not, is a mooring permit is a mooring permit is a mooring permit is a mooring permit in perpetuity until either revoked or sorry, there's no word, but surrendered. Thank you very much. So
Go back to the slides. That's the only video I'll play. So that's an example of a broken promise. We were told in public that moorings would be transferable in perpetuity by Mr. Blank. Also, Aaron Hart confirmed it in the meeting or said that in the meeting. And a year later, we had a surprise proposal that did just the opposite, right? It's that whiplash policymaking. How are we supposed to trust that the grandfathered rates would have actually been implemented or kept when we see this back and forth, right? It's very confusing and stressful. We also see a lot of disparate treatment. So despite all the tidelands in the harbor belonging to the state, we see vastly different treatment of some tidelands users over others. Moorings and residential piers, for example, are very similar use. They both provide coastal access, they both pay tidelands fees, they're both self-installed, they're self-maintained, and they don't cost the city anything, and they're both transferable. Obviously, we're all aware the rates, though, are very different. We also see the treatment as being very different. For a residential pier, homeowners of piers can rent them out for profit. The permits are limited to real property owners. There's no tidelands fee assessed for the boat, the water they float on, or the tidelands over which they float. Insurance and registration, proof of that is not required. Die tabs are not required, and they're not required to prove that they are safe, seaworthy, and operable. On the same tidelands, owned by the state of California, mooring permits, or boats on mooring permits, have very different treatment. We see the city can sublet to the public when vacant, and we don't keep any of that profit despite it being our own tackle. It's a public benefit that we provide. All sublet revenues do go to the Tidelands Fund for public benefit. We pay very high transfer fees, 75% of the year's payment. Permits are available to anyone, non-residents, boaters on a budget. They're required to prove, boats on these moorings are required to prove that they are safe, seaworthy, and operable. Proof of registration is required, and insurance is required with naming the city as an additional insurer. City data also shows that mooring holders pay more into the Tidelands Fund than residential and commercial piers. Mooring holders actually pay more per square foot than residential pier permittees, even more than the state land's benchmark rate. You know, as we've heard from the Lieutenant Governor, the city has really wide discretion over what it charges for use of the tidelands, but that discretion we don't feel has been fairly applied. The discrimination that we're experiencing needs to be resolved before any other changes are made to the current permit system. In summary, the current mooring permit system basically works. We already pay more than the tidelands fees than comparable self-maintained moorings in nearby harbors. This system funds the tidelands, it's self-sufficient, and it keeps the harbor accessible. We need to work on fixing the discrimination in the rates and the treatment, but the system itself can be saved. The proposed license system would destroy affordability and stability for working class families like mine that rely on the mooring permits for coastal access. Licenses would mean a lot of changes to our community. Ending transferability would harm our working class community, prohibiting liveaboards even though we are facing a housing crisis that is unlikely to go away anytime soon. And then there's the month-to-month instability that would interfere with long-term sailing plans. Like when my family went to Mexico for a year when I was in 7th grade, we knew we had a mooring to come back to. This is not the path towards equitable treatment. So moving forward, we don't think the solution is very complicated. We're looking for parity with similar permittees. There's a lot of discretion that the city has over the tide limits and how they're managed, and we know that this is a room of really smart people that can figure out a way to make that happen. We're looking for preservation of the liveaboard system for current and future boaters. We're looking for an active seat at the table for mooring holders when changes are being discussed. And we're looking for a new approach to constructive dialogue between the Harbor Commission and the NMA. My dad used to tell me that insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. And we've been coming and speaking. I think you have a pretty good idea where we're coming from. I think we'd all rather spend more time out on our boats doing other things. So we just want a way to work this out that's going to be constructive and potentially a mediated dialogue with a third party. Might be a good way to do that. I'm not going to try to make that play. Okay. So I'll end with this one question. How will this commission and city leaders prove to the mooring community the city is working to ensure equitable treatment on behalf of all tidelands users and not just them? Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Before I open it up to commissioners to give you the opportunity for some feedback and maybe any questions that commissioners have, I just want to address a couple of things that you have in your slide presentation. And again, first I want to thank you. I understand the concerns for constructive dialogue for sure, and your other concerns are also clear. But I do want to reference slides 2 and 3 that state broken promises and public assurance of mooring transfer in perpetuity, respectively. So I believe these statements may be false and misleading. Additionally, the video is a subsection of a city council meeting that may be taken out of context and may also be misleading. A mooring permit, as stated in the mooring permit agreement signed by mooring permittees and is set forth in Title 17, is essentially a temporary right to moor a vessel over public tidelands held in trust by the city of Newport Beach for the state of California. However, practice has been to renew these permits annually as they become due and allow for transferability. This hasn't changed on the mooring permits that exist today. Additionally, in the video, Harbor Master Blank was referring to whether the new city license program would affect the transferability of the existing mooring permits. And the answer was that the city license program would have no effect on the existing mooring permits or their transferability. Clearly, no promise, and a promise, as defined by Webster, is a declaration of intent, was made or could be made that the transferability of mooring permits would not be changed in the future. This is also supported by the recent State Lands Commission letter to the city that the transfer may be in violation of the California State Constitution. So I just wanted to make those brief clarifications before I open it up to the commissioners, and I'll start with Commissioner Miller.
I was hoping to get one clarification. You did great research, and thank you. I learned a lot from just reading the initial presentation, and the way you gave it to us was terrific. And one of the things you brought up was the disparity in treatment between residential pier holders and what the mooring fields look like. And you might not know the answer, and maybe we don't, isn't piers that are attached to homes titled as part of the property? It's separate from that. I've
They
heard.
are on public timelines. It's a really
Now they're
good question.
over public timelines, but the owner of the pier, unlike the owner of the mooring, is different. I'm just wondering what your opinion is on the clarification of that. Because when I started looking into it, I know when you transfer title, let's say you live on Leo Island and you have a dock that goes with that, it's part of the title of the home on a transfer. So
they
when
are
you purchase a
transferred.
home, when you purchase a home, the home comes with that dock part of the pier. I was just curious about how when you looked into it, started peeling back the onion, because you always did a lot of great research. And I read, hey, it's unfair on that side. I'm just trying to draw where you're coming from to say that the residential homeowner or pier owner is in the same vein that somebody that has a mooring permit over those two things, and you view them the same. And I'm just trying, maybe you could draw that comparison about how it's the same thing.
That's a really good question, and I appreciate that, and that would be something that I think might take more time than we have for tonight to really get into, and I don't want to give you the wrong answer. So again, this is another example where having that mediated dialogue and really digging into that would be a really good thing to do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. I just want to get a little clarification on that shipwreck.
Thank you. Commissioner Yon, do you have any comments or questions at this time?
I have none.
Thank you. Vice Chair?
Thank you for your presentation, I appreciate it. I want to just comment on the transparency, lack of transparency. I get the sense from tonight and other meetings that you think there's a lot of backroom deals going on, and there's just not. It's all been publicly noticed and public meetings and public workshops. So I don't know what the NMA thinks as far as the lack of transparency, but in my eyes, you guys have been in the know about everything. There